Hi, everyone. This is Jaime Alejandro with the Arts Calling podcast, bringing you conversations with independent creatives in the literary, visual, and performing arts. Today, I'm delighted to be Arts Calling Jessica Berg, agency director at Rosecliff Literary, where she champions bold, emotionally resonant fiction with unforgettable characters, strong stakes, and a sense of urgency. Rosecliff is a literary agency for authors who crave clarity, strategy, and a little feral encouragement. They blend editorial depth with real-world know-how, and they don't flinch when things get messy. So be sure to stop by their website at rosecliffliterary.com in the episode description, and be sure to check out their monthly series on Zoom, Lunch with an Agent, in which Rosecliff agents go live on Zoom to break down one part of the process that's currently unraveling writers. It's free to attend, but registration is required. So head on over to the episode description to connect with Rosecliff Literary. And at this time, I'd like to take a moment to send my sincere thanks to Jessica for her remarkable insights and energy in this interview, as well as for her patience. We had this conversation lined up to release earlier this summer, but life, being what it is, delayed it tremendously. So from the bottom of my heart, my sincere thanks again to Jessica, and of course, shout out to Tommy Dean for making this conversation possible. Okay, I believe I have said enough, so without further delay, let's give Jessica a call. Hi, Jessica. Good morning. How are you today?
I am well. How are you doing?
Oh, this is wonderful. I'm having a wonderful time today and was definitely looking forward to having this chat with you. So I know we're going to talk about all things publishing, running a literary agency, and there's going to be so much to cover there. But I'd like to start at the beginning with a bit of your personal origin into not only the literary agenting world, but in your writing and sort of how you originate your own aesthetic. Could we begin at the beginning, just for a little bit? I know it's kind of hard to go back, and reminisce and do all this stuff. But what do you remember leaving an impression on you when you were younger? Like, what kind of books were you reading when you were a kid, and what prompted you to write?
Wow. I mean, you're asking me where my lore started, so we are not messing around today. Okay, I love this question. Right. So I grew up bilingual. So I grew up speaking English and Russian, and straight away I recognized that story offered a portal for me. I grew up in a really poor community, was very, very poor, and the library is free. And because the library is free, that means that I can then expand horizons. And so that really had a deep impact on me. And, when you come from a lower socioeconomic class, finding role models can be a challenge in the way that we want them to be, right? Role models who embody what we might be seeing in books or in literature. And so I thought, how can I begin to craft and shape character that not only reflects, my lived experience, but then also might offer something to someone else who's experiencing something the same. So I guess that's really where it all started. I definitely cut my teeth with poetry. I thought, okay, this is obviously the easiest way in, right? Of course, this is the way to go. And I quickly realized that that's not the way to go. And then, just sort of dabbled with novels and short stories for a really long time. I earned an MFA, and, I like to say I'm a recovering literary fiction writer because I want a career and I like paying bills, like you can't do that as being a lit fic writer. So I feel like that's a good place to pause. I can absolutely continue, but we can pause.
No,
there.
I appreciate it because it is sort of a loaded question because it's like an immediate, hey, why don't you just sort of unfold yourself out into the world? But I think just enough context is perfect for us. But the way that you arrive at running a literary agency, though, it seems like there is certainly an entrepreneurial aspect to running this kind of work, because once you go beyond just wanting to create work that could be fine art, that could be literary expression, you feel like you have to come back to basics. So how do you negotiate that as an artist yourself and somebody who is running a business? Because I think maybe we can sort of try to dovetail these two things of trying to help people bring community together, but also to create a sustainable model for your business? Because I think that has to be important as well.
Yeah, I learned a very long time ago that you have to put yourself first. You have to pay yourself first. And I think that's a very difficult task when you're running a business. So, that's exactly what I do. Yeah, I wake up, I sit to morning pages before I do absolutely anything. I give myself 90 minutes of my own time, and then I'll give 10 hours to my client because that feels like a fair trade right now.
So how do you, I guess, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but I would like to ask you about why a lit agency? Why do you feel like that was the right thing for you to pursue at this time, and sort of how it originated? Because I think it would be nice to have that context as well.
Yeah. So, I have always been one who, if I don't see a path forward for myself, I'm just going to make one. And I have worked for a long time as a developmental editor. And I love that because I could get to know authors, work really intensely and deeply on their projects. But then I found myself mourning them because then they go off and their projects leave me and I never know, okay, well, what happened with that? How did you do? What happened? Right. And so I sat with that feeling for a while, trying to understand first where the disconnect was and then what I could do. And I arrived at the point that, oh, what I need to be doing with my life is being a literary agent because we serve as the connectors between the work and the world. And so, I sat with that for a while. I thought, okay, is this really something I want to do? I looked at the traditional quote unquote routes into publishing, which generally involve, go be an unpaid intern for 6, 9, 12 months. Not accessible for me, right? Like that's just not going to work. So I brought my idea to my agent and said, hey, I've got this crazy idea. And she turned and she looked at me and she said, that is so wild because I had the same idea for you. So I think she recognized, this kind of personality that's required, which is really, since it's a relationships business, right? It's like, how do you find the talent and then put it out into the world? So in short, I saw what I wanted to do. I saw no path in that followed traditional roadways. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to do this myself. Mm-hmm. And that then it even further reinforces those earlier reasons why I felt so compelled to write, right? Which is bringing story to community. And to community means to me, not necessarily New York. And so if I can do this from where I am, if I can tap authors who are in places that maybe we don't have a large literary presence, then I'm absolutely feeling very valid in what I initially set out to do.
Right. So would you say that's sort of the primary differentiator between what a lit agency traditionally does? Because it seems like the literary world is still very much entrenched in places like New York, and I guess that's about it. So what alongside this kind of offering then of breaking out of that region, would you say are the services and offerings that differentiate from other lit agencies over at Rosecliff?
Well, we're all authors, and we've all been in the space for a very long time. So I think we approach the work from two different ways, which is, we understand the challenges of being an author, but then we also can say, okay, but this is how you have to meet the work, right? So I think literary agencies, especially those centered in places where we expect to find them, sometimes view the work only as commodity. And I think because we are all authors, we understand, okay, your heart has bled quite a bit for what's on the page. And we want to be tender with that and to move carefully and mindfully and to help shape it into something that then is the work that becomes sellable.
You had a couple of lovely quotes here from the last podcast you did. I believe it was of the Publishing Persuasion, which was a great podcast and a great chat that I urge people to go check out too. But you said that there is a difference between a writer and an author, and you elaborated on that so well. I'm hoping if you could repeat some of that here, because I think it is a sense of delineation that is needed to be seen. So maybe you could share some of those thoughts again.
Absolutely. I talk about this quite often because I think it's really important for us. And I want to preface this by saying there is no wrong answer here. If you choose to operate in the space of being a writer for the rest of your life, that's absolutely fine. But if at any point a sliver of motivation has come into your brain that says, I would like to make money from this art, then we have to stop calling ourselves writers because it connotes a level of hobby and it connotes something that we do on weekend or when we have free time. When I believe when we start calling ourselves authors, what we're doing is we're saying we take the work for what it is, but now we're making it into a commodity to fit the market. And that's a really delicate space to be in as creatives because intrinsically, I think we like to operate under this umbrella of saying, oh, we don't need to make money, right? Like this feels weird to say we want to create art to make money. But when you start calling yourself a writer, fine, you're learning your craft, you're doing your things. But when you want to be an author, when you want to make the money, you have to really show up for the work in that way. And then you can't be precious about it, right? You can't say, I'm not going to write in this way and follow a linear structure, or I'm not going to write in this way and conform to POV or whatever it is that's your issue with the current market. Because if you want to sell books, you have to conform to the market. My agent always tells me, write 4 books, develop your readership, and then you can get a little weird because she knows how weird I am, right? And it's advice that I pass along as well. Like you can't come out of the gate being weird. It's just if you can't. We all want that, but right, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not trying to be cheeky about it at all, but I'm saying truly, if your goal is to sell books, then you cannot offer us this strange non-linear structure or a ton of narrative that breaks the rules because the rules exist for a reason to start.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many wonderful directions that we could go with this, but I'm really kind of trying to think about the outside factors that are introduced when you transition from being a writer to an author. And then at that point, of course, you're welcoming the kind of scrutiny that is necessary to grow, but also looking at these market factors. Could we take a minute to sort of talk about what's going on today in terms of these outside influences? Because I know that book talk is a big thing, and I've always been curious, and this might be a slight digression, but how does this affect narrative? How does this affect the shape of stories right now when we're living in this kind of literary community that is so heavily impacted by such a fast, bite-sized sort of medium and those kinds of commentaries that are happening there? I'd be curious to kind of get your sense of the pulse of that on the impact of writing.
Yeah, so much to talk about. I was just chatting with an author friend today who said, they believe the industry does authors disservice by requiring a book a year when you're following a traditional publishing route, because it means that the work ultimately suffers. So I think so many things. I always have so many thoughts. First, in my gut, I'm feeling like the novella is poised for a comeback. And that is because an 8-second video is now considered too long. When I talk to my social media people, they're like, you have to get us in 2 seconds or we're moving on. So why would we not then come to the novella form, which still can feel like, oh, I'm carrying my book out. I can take pictures of it. I can pose with it, right? To lean into that Bookstagram, book talk community. I also think maybe we're straddling this space right now where authors are poised to become influencers. And I think that that's a very strange space to be. We see that with, the way that Colleen Hoover broke out with all of her work, even though she is not personally online, the Book Talk girlies found her and off we went. So I think that there's an opportunity there for authors to, say, how can we mimic this? How can we replicate this? But it then comes at the risk of feeling like maybe it's art for consumption's sake. Like, do you remember back in the day when reality TV was first getting its legs, right? And we were all thought, wow, this is just amazing. It's unscripted. There are all these things that are happening. We don't know how to feel about it. And we all tuned in. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now is we're not sure how to feel about what we're seeing online. We know that we want to consume the content. But as we all know, look what reality is. Reality TV is now. It's not at all what that was. There's no origin there, right? So I think that we might be close to that. But all said, I think ultimately we are looking for a shorter narrative, right?
That's such an interesting sort of way to accept the conditions that are happening right now and sort of making the best of what is going on. I feel like there might be a lot of folks who are maybe hesitating in diving deep into this world of being a social media voice, I should say, and being an
Mhm.
artist as well. I know that there's a lot of thought about perhaps are we spilling too much of the behind the scenes as we get out into the world and try to make ourselves be seen. Like, what do you say to people who feel like they can't reconcile the world of somebody who's a maker behind the scenes creating their work and being an individual who needs to be forward facing 99% of the time to be a viable marketable author?
Writing is 30% of your job, first of all. The rest of it is being a literary citizen. The rest of it is supporting your other authors. So that's one. So if you cannot reconcile with the fact that you need to be forward facing online, then maybe we continue to operate you on the railroad track of being a writer. Right. And that's where that distinction comes in. Because if you're going to accept that your work is commodity, then you have to accept market conditions. So that's first of all. Secondly, we never, I don't think that we're peeling back the layers too much. I think that readers want to know who we are, but I think that there's this stick in the mud for early authors who are like, well, I don't know what to talk about. I don't have anything to say, which is not true at all. I think that we've been taught to promote ourselves and to market ourselves. And what I always encourage is to show up the way you want to be seen, first of all, but then also take all the stress out of it and pretend like you're creating content for your best friend. Like, what is the most ridiculous text you send your best friend because you're unguarded and you feel safe and you feel seen and you don't feel like you need to add all this backstory? Oh, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. And in that way, in showing up that authentically, that vulnerably, I think that you're going to magnetize the right type of community, right? Like, let's get away from calling them followers. Let's stop like with our numbers. As an author myself, I care less about my numbers and more about my community. Do you want to see how ridiculous my mind is? Please come hang out with me online, right? Because isn't that what it's meant to be? If we're talking about peeling back the layers, it's not here's a very staged shot for Instagram. Behind the scenes, I turn on my computer, I drink from my Stanley Cup, blah, blah, blah. No one cares. I don't care. That's not going to resonate with me as a reader or as an author.
So there's so many options to take when it comes to the social media channels that one could pursue. And I know you do a lot of workshopping work on this, which is a great service that you're offering to the literary community. But, just sort of on a general bird's eye view here, what do you think are good social marketing platforms right now? Because there is sort of like a big tectonic shift in terms of where people are anymore. Do you notice a specific stronghold for the literary community, or is that something that doesn't really come into play?
Well, I think we're all looking for a place to recreate Twitter, first of all. Blue Sky and Threads are really trying hard because as writers and authors, we like text-based media. But I think it doesn't matter. I think if you like a platform, you're going to be more excited and more engaged. So wherever you want to hang out, go hang out there. What's the line from the movie? And I know you know it. If they build it, they will come, right? Like if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
build it, they will come. So that's all you need to worry about is
right.
is showing up authentically online.
Yeah. You had this great line on the podcast as well that you said this isn't about networking, it's a cocktail party. And
Oh
and
yeah.
I'd love for you to elaborate on that because I think you're touching on that same ground here when it comes to presenting yourself in an honest light.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're at a cocktail party, the goal is not to pass your business card to every person. The goal is to learn, at least when I go to a cocktail party, I want to learn about everyone else who's there. So I'm going to ask engaging questions. I'm going to want to know more about that person's life. So often with social media, we think that the spotlight is on us, and really we should be putting the spotlight on someone else. So when I'm going to my feeds, and I'm engaging, as the brand and for myself, I'm like, I want to get to know you. You really don't need to get to know me very well right now because this is how we build community. So if we approach it in that way, it feels first less daunting. Secondly, less like a chore because who wants to go to a networking event? And then thirdly, right? Like no one
Yeah.
loves that, but everyone loves a cocktail party. There's tiny snacks and like fun fizzy drinks. Like then I think that comes back to showing up authentically, and it allows for that authenticity to really ring true in your posts and in your engagement.
Yeah. How does this align with being a literary citizen? I love this idea, and I'm hoping you could give us a bit of an overview on what that means and how that can help you become a richer and fuller author in the progress of becoming one.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we are a small community, even if we feel large. We are a small community. And so what does that mean? That means if you see someone's coming out with a book, even if it's not a genre you read, it takes 2 seconds, no seconds, it takes nothing to repost it, to heart their thing, to share it, to like it. It is the same as leaving a book review. It is doing all the things that when you are in that position, you want your community to do for you. And it really is such low lift in terms of effort, right? But beyond that, your closest readers, the people who will check you on show versus tell, on this motivation, on this character arc, are never going to be the readers who see that finished project coming out from HarperCollins. They are going to be the CPs and the beta readers and the folks that you find online that you connect with, that you then share your worst pages with because you know they're going to receive them. And then you do the same for them, right? Like it's because it's never followers, it's always community.
You said that the pace of one book a year is insane for an author to put out a book. Can we talk about the development for a little bit and what that entails? Like, why is a year this sort of I guess unreachable metric, and what kind of time frame would be ideal? Maybe we could compare those two things in an ideal world and what's actually happening right now with development and some of the work that happens there.
Yeah, I think a book every 2 years is far more reasonable so that the author has time to sit with the work for a while first, and then secondly, to entrust it to those trusted early readers, to get the work in the shape that we want to see post, right? Like when it's out in the world. I think that we lean toward a book a year because number one, publishing is very slow. So even if your agent sells your book today, the very earliest you're going to see it is 18 months out. And so in terms of, how do we keep our production cycle going? That's how, is that your editor is going to consistently ask you for a book a year. I have been writing for many decades and I can produce a book a year, but they're not great, right? They're not wonderful. And I don't, it's so frustrating to then say to my authors, okay, well, now you've got to do this in 12 months. Meanwhile, please continue to be a literary citizen. Meanwhile, continue to develop your relationships. We're going to have to prep for book launch. Oh, don't forget your book tours. You should be doing your there is so much else that publishing asks of us. And so I think if we could extend to 18 or 24 months, maybe we wouldn't feel so feverish to get work out. And I think that it also dilutes the quality, right? Like, especially with highly successful commercial authors, you kind of know what you're going to get when you pick it up. And that's sad, right? I read because I love prose. I want to know, I want to lose myself in simile and in metaphor and assonance and all the things. And I think that when we are on this really, really fast production cycle, we can't do that.
Yeah. As you've developed your own aesthetic of what you're looking for, how does this transfer over to Rosecliff? And maybe I should ask, like, what kinds of things do you look for in a manuscript? What are the great differentiators in work that is not ready and work that you're ready to pounce on?
Propulsive storytelling, right? Like, I need to feel very much like I am in the hands of an author who not only knows their craft, but is going to take me along a journey. Because what we're asking of our readers is, please spend 80,000 words with me. And so immediately, straight away, those first pages are so key, right? We want to understand obviously stakes and conflict and all the things, but it's voice and it's propulsive storytelling. I think I'm going to back up just really quickly and say, I think that the industry often has a lot of gates. Some of them feel a little unnecessary, but some of them are very important. One of those gates that to me is very important is a query letter. And that is because I can tell pretty quickly from the query letter the level of craft education, craft instruction, how long you've been writing, by the way you present the project. And so that, if we're looking at what are the projects that literary agents want to pounce on and they're excited about, it starts with that very first impression of the query letter. So that's also one of the reasons why I love going to conferences and meeting authors in real time, because I recognize that a query letter can be a barrier to entry. If you have not understood, had the education, not done your homework to figure out how to do it, but you can sell me on your book in a few sentences in an elevator pitch, I might be able to then say, okay, you've got the skills, but you haven't received that formal education, right? So, but then back to the original question, what do I look for? I always look for a strong voice. I look for something that feels high concept. And so that means I look for something that feels very universal, but unique in a new way.
Very good. Very good. I think it's going to give folks a lot of ideas of things to zero in on. And you also, it reminds me here of this notion of that you mentioned of lasting relationships, because obviously you're looking for people that you can kind of get along with, because it seems like this is going to be a long journey. Is that sort of what the role of the literary agent is, to sort of shepherd people on, or how would this work at Rosecliff in terms of bringing people into the fold and mentorship and that sort of thing?
Oh my gosh, that's exactly what it is. It's a relationships business. I recognize I have a very intense personality and I love a spreadsheet, and I am not for every person, you know? And I mean, if you don't align with your literary agent in a really, really close friend kind of way, then it's not going to work. Because what is my role? My ultimate role is to champion your vision, elevate your voice, and hold your hand as you walk through the publishing industry. I'm never going to produce your work. I can never promote your work the way that you can, right? Like that's your lane. My lane is to
Right.
make sure that I give you all the tools you need and hold your hand to be there. So
Mm.
ultimately, sometimes that's what it comes down to, is just, can we connect on a person to person level?
One of the great takeaways of the things that you've said in the past for me was this notion of narrative building empathy. And I feel that in this day and age, it seems to be sort of like the perfect mantra to follow. And I'm curious if you could maybe share a little bit of how we can do that better as a literary community, as writers, maybe some personal thoughts on why empathy, why now, and how narrative can play a part in it. That's a starting point. I'm just going to throw the kitchen sink at you.
I know, right? You are coming with all the questions. It's amazing. Um, I mean, aside from all of the very obvious reasons why empathy is such a requirement right now in 2025, I think that narrative is at the core of humanity. We, from the earliest iteration of humanity, we brought ourselves together with story, because story teaches morality, story teaches ethics, story teaches compassion, right? This is empathy. This is what we're talking about. So it is absolutely vital that we do not exist in echo chambers where we're hearing the same kind of story, that we open the aperture to our narrative exposure. And that means reading outside of your lived experience, reading outside of folks who might, the people who look like you, sound like you, talk like you, have names like yours. Otherwise, the risk we run is deep, deep polarization. And in an era where we can absolutely exist only in an echo chamber, I think it is essential to humanity, to the art of what we're doing, that we look for ways to understand another person's heart. Absolutely cannot do it otherwise.
There's a tremendous amount of resolve in a lot of the things that you're sharing, and I'm very grateful for that, because I think we need voices like yours who are very set on the direction that we need to be going. I think it's very much appreciated and needed. But I'm curious if there's been a moment of hesitation, a moment of doubt in the work, and what kind of thought process snaps you out of defeat, hesitation, when you're struggling to, again, reconcile the outside challenges of an artistic literary life.
Yeah, that's a great question. I am a tragic optimist. So I will see a building on fire and I'm like, well, something else is going to come there, right? So um, that's just my standard operating state. But beyond that, I think it is a challenge to continue to have hope in this era. But if you are called to story and you're called to narrative, then the easiest next leap is that you're called to story and narrative to help change the world. And so in moments like this thing that just broke last week with Meta, pirating 7.2 billion books or whatever it is, knowing full well that they could buy every single one of them, support our art, and they chose not to. It can be so demoralizing, and it can be absolutely it can leave us all feeling very bereft. But that's why you need your community. That's why you need your literary citizens to rally around, to go to the poetry readings and the first page reads, and to go to your indie bookstores and to support community, because it is in these micro steps that we impact and affect change.
That's amazing. I love that so much. And you touch on the whole AI situation that is taking over. And it's hard not to feel hopeless about it, but do you feel like there is a roadmap out of this for the market? Do you feel that there will come a time when right alongside HarperCollins, there is an AI, author coming out, alongside just a normal human being? Or is this something that we shouldn't even worry about?
Oh, I think we should worry because it's far too easy. It's too easy to reach. I've tried to wrestle it like, oh, well, early on when computers really came into our lives, graphic design became a thing, right? Where it went on screen, and then you've got tools that earlier graphic artists might not have had. And I sometimes can pause myself there and say, okay, and that industry did not implode, right? But I don't think that the appeal of being a graphic designer is maybe the same as being the appeal of being a writer. So, especially in this content driven environment we live in, where all content is storytelling, I think that everyone feels like, oh, it's an easy reach to come to story. So, I hope that we never come to the point where, alongside the big five, we've got like big five AI imprints. I think that that would be a massive detriment to our industry and to our art as a whole. But I don't know how to stop it. And I think that that's where we all get stuck, is how do we stop any of this?
Yeah, it's such a problematic thing, but it's also one of these very existential things that I like to just sit and completely waste thought over when perhaps
Mhm.
maybe the best thing to do would be to focus on the work rather than coming up with more scenarios of destruction and cataclysm. But I got a couple more questions here to be mindful of your time, and
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious if we could zero in on Rosecliff for a minute. What does
Mhm.
the future hold for Rosecliff? What are the goals for this year that you're looking to tackle? Especially, I noticed that you're doing a lot of workshops, as I mentioned, but you're also bringing in lit agents as well, right? Friend of the show,
Mhm.
Tommy Dean. Let's give him a shout out. He's joined you guys recently, right?
Yes, Tommy joined. He joined back in January, and then we went. We made the announcement, sometime after. Um, I've known Tommy for a very long time, and his editorial eye is one of the sharpest I've ever come across. So I'm delighted to have him on board. And we just announced our latest agent, Grace Demian. So we're growing. Ultimately, I want us to be an agency for authors who feel like they don't know where to go. They don't understand how their work fits into the space, into the world. They don't they don't feel like they've got that community. I think that that then comes back to my most earliest ambitions of like being a space for people, right? Um, this year, obviously Grace and Tommy are both actively building lists. I've got space to take on a few more nonfiction clients and a few more fiction clients. And ultimately, I'd like to see the agency continue to grow. I think we have an opportunity here to sort of first demystify the publishing process. We try to make it less terrible for everyone by here, we'll take this gate away. We're going to tell you exactly how to do it, and even if you don't end up signing with us, when one boat rises, all boats rise, right? That should be the prevailing mantra for this entire industry. So yeah, I'd love to see, us bring on several additional agents, continue to grow to bring story into the world. That's what we're here for.
Lastly, I'm curious of what you would say to an individual who's looking to begin a literary agency, somebody who, what kind of person would need to do this? What kind of calling would that be? And then I'll hold my other question here after you share some thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think, first you have to be very detail oriented. This is a lot of following up and, checking back in. So spreadsheet. I think beyond that, if you have a calling to help bring story to the world and you don't see an opportunity to go the quote traditional route, which is to say go intern in New York for 6, 9, 12 months, unpaid, blah, 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 then you might look at how you can start your own agency. I think for a long time, we've kind of held this shroud of mystery around, oh, literary agency, oh, very spooky. How does it happen? We don't know. Um, And with, everything going online, like it does not need to be exactly where it is. There are amazing resources out there. The AALA is absolutely a must for anyone, I think, who is interested in becoming an agent because of the resources that they provide, the community they provide. And then, of course, lean into your existing agency. I'm very fortunate that I have a ton of agent friends who are so patient with me when I say, hey, is this ridiculous? Or hey, is this good? Right? Because it's the whole thing that I've been talking about this entire conversation, which is community, right? Like none of this would be possible if I did not have these amazing pillars of support that I can go to. And so, if you're interested in being a literary agent, first come find me online. I will happily talk with anyone about this, of course, like be in my DMs, and then look to see, okay, is this something I can absolutely do? Also, I will say, this is all unpaid labor until your client sells a book. This is all unpaid labor. So I do not make any money until I sell my client's book. So that means for the last almost year, 60-hour work weeks. Yes, it's a lot of work. What's my ROI on that? Well, in building a business from scratch. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to teach and to supplement with, doing conferences and those sorts of things. But if you are in any way reticent to the amount of workload that it's going to take to develop, I would say maybe you should look for an alternative route.
It's phenomenal. That's in a nutshell the big question to ask yourself. Lastly, okay, this is the last one for real.
Okay.
I tend to ask folks right at the end, and I apologize if it becomes saccharine, but I really just feel like this is important to think about. It's very daunting to exist. That's my core philosophy.
Yeah.
But I like asking people. Listen, I know that we all have things to take care of, things to deal with. But what are the habits and rituals and things that you have to do, the non-negotiables of your life, that allow you to remain a decent human being, full of love, sustainability? How do you stay going? What keeps you moving forward, and what does that look like on a day-to-day?
So meditation is really big in my life. A daily practice now for over 400 days, consistent, right? So that's huge. Movement is really big. I'm a long distance runner. I love to lift heavy weights, so that's also non-negotiable. I've been having this love-hate relationship with journaling lately, so I obviously understand why it's so good for you, and I've been a curmudgeon about it, and it's come back into my life, and I hate to say how much it's improved. So that's quickly becoming this thing that I now have to do every day. But beyond that, I rely so heavily on my closest friends and family. I am always, always thinking about them, and I hope they are thinking about me, because I recognize none of this happens alone. So those are, three pillars for sure. But beyond that, like in a less woo sense, I take time to read for myself every day that has nothing to do with work. I love a good cat meme, cat video, meme drop. I find ways to make myself laugh because, to your point, existence is incredibly daunting and one could quickly become morose. But if we can look for the small joy, no matter how small, I think that ultimately serves us well and then serves our community.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on. Jessica, I want to thank you so much for your time, for this masterclass of insight here on the literary agenting journey, but also for the support that you're doing, reminding us that it's important to be a literary citizen to help us persevere. And of course, I know we just scratched the surface, but this has been an absolute pleasure. And so I hope we get to catch up down the road.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. You take care.
You too. See you.
Bye.
Bye.